It's Taco Tuesday!
Yo, what's going on, everyone? It's your boy Taco, back with a new video on this fine Tuesday, and I'm excited because today I'll be covering a complete guide of the basics and just an overall overview of the new MMO, New World by Amazon Games. Yes, Amazon with Bezos and his giant penis rocket.
Oh my god, it looks like a huge
Hacker!
Oh, where?
Jokes aside, before we get started, I just want to say that from the moment I got access to New World, I've been fully addicted, and it's been some time since I've been able to sit down and really grind a game for hours upon hours upon hours and not feel the need to take a break or get bored with what I'm playing. Now, if you've been following the hype, New World's closed beta just ended yesterday, so if you didn't get a chance to play the beta, August 31st, the game is set to fully release on PC. Now, I've been raving about New World on Twitter, in my Discord server, which if you aren't a member, link in the description, would love to have you guys join. But people kept asking me, what is New World? And this video is for them. So if you didn't get a chance to play the beta, or let's say you did, I'm still going to run through an overview of all the main elements of the game, and really a beginner's guide for when the full game releases, you're able to hit the ground running. And really, I just want to capture my thoughts overall on why New World, in my opinion, has so much potential moving forward. So let's get right into it. The game and story starts off with a shipwreck where you land on this island, which is basically like a tutorial island. For those of you who've played RuneScape, it's basically the same thing, where you quickly learn the controls and you're sent on a few tasks to get used to the world and gameplay. Now, you're honestly not here for too long, but I did appreciate having a bit of time to understand the basic controls and really just get a feel for the overall game before being bombarded and pushed on forward with quests in the next area. The starting area exists in several of the territories across the bottom and middle of the map. The map is broken into larger territories which ultimately can be fought, and more importantly controlled by a set faction. So the game has three factions: Covenant, which are yellow, Marauders in green, and Syndicate in purple. And each of these have differing values that are related in the lore of the game. Factions are made up of companies, which are clans or guilds. Territories initially can be bought by a company for around 10,000 gold, and this allows them to control the parameters of the territory, such as the trading fees or the crafting fees, among some other things. So diving further into territories, each territory has both a fort, which can be controlled by the various factions, and a main settlement, which is kind of your trade hub or the main town for that territory. Now, within the main settlement, there is a town board offering various tasks or small quests which reward you with XP. So initially, and in my experience for the majority of the beta, this was the fastest method of gaining XP for your overall character's level. Now, these tasks are pretty simple. They could be, kill 5 sheep or deliver 300 wood logs. And when you're starting out initially, these basic skilling or non-combat skills are really going to be your best friend. Whether it's harvesting hemp to make linen, fishing for salmon, or simply chopping down trees, which there was a lot of.
So you wanna live long, so you wanna be free.
These will make completing the town board tasks a lot easier for you, and you will level up really quick. Now, my biggest issue with starting out was I had no idea where to find certain resources. Luckily, the map has a topography breakdown or filter, which shows you where certain resources are in that territory. But after the beta, and even after playing a few hours, you'll begin learning the spawns within the territory that you're in. The alternative missions that are also located in your settlement are faction quests. Once you've reached a few levels, you'll be able to select one of the 3 factions and complete both PvE and PvP quests to gain reputation for your faction. Now, this is going to allow you to level up, but also by gaining reputation with your faction, you gain access to faction-specific weapons and gear, which will progress and level up in tier as your status in the faction progresses. So I went with Covenant simply because my friend convinced me, and they controlled Everfall, which was my home territory. Meaning I spawned there when I died, and for the majority of my storage, it was all kept in Everfall. Now, you're able to change your spawn to any settlement, and if you buy a house in that settlement, you can always fast travel to that house too. But by having your faction control that territory, you're helping them level up the tiers for all the crafting stations, such as, the blacksmith's table or the area for cooking, which is going to open you up to creating bigger and better things. And if your company controls the settlement and the territory, you're going to benefit from all the taxes that the others pay. And you're going to be able to set the fees as high and low as you like if you are the governor of that company. Now, you are able to change your faction one time, at least that was my understanding, but you cannot pick the faction that has the most territory or the most map control. So after that, I believe there'll be a set number of days before you're able to change it again. I think initially on the beta it was over 100 days, but that could change with full release, and it could be, a cost of gold or Azoth or some other meaning of changing it. So the main story, which is usually highlighted as the first mission in your journal, is the other quest giving option. For me, the main story wasn't necessarily compelling, and since it was the beta, I pretty much just skipped through the majority of the dialogue. You basically just ran around the world for some bald dude doing different tasks, and then eventually I gained access to my first dungeon, which was called Armin, which was actually a hell of a time, and that really made me look forward to seeing more of the higher tier end game dungeon and PvE content after experiencing that. But for the main story, in short, there really is no main story. I mean, I think that should be a huge point of attack for the devs to work on in this month, but it wasn't largely greater than some of the tasks and smaller quests that you would do that were faction or town related. Moving on now to the weapons. All of the options are highlighted here on screen, and as you can tell, we have a decent bit of weapon variety. Since it was a beta, I explored and experimented with the majority of these, at least for a period of time, but for the most part, I stuck with the Fire Staff and Rapier as my build so I could maximize leveling up those two. Each weapon is going to have 3 slots for abilities that you can choose in this ability tree format, and by leveling up the weapon, you're able to allocate a point to one of these abilities or buffs for the weapon. Now for your character, whenever you level up your overall level, you're going to gain 3 attribute points to commit to the various attribute or character traits. Now these traits are associated with your gear and weapons as well, so you really need to get a grasp on what your build's going to be, what weapons you're going to play with as you begin to build your character. Luckily, you are able to reset both your weapon traits and your character traits for a charge. Now I know in the beta it wasn't much, I think it was a little bit of gold and a bit of Azoth, but I imagine on full release they're probably going to scale that up to where you're less inclined to switch your build and kind of stick with what you have, but I could be wrong. Now for me, I ran a battle mage kind of build where I would either have medium or light armor, which kept me quick so I was able to roll and dodge. More importantly, I was able to hawk down enemies in PvP very quickly, and then in PvE, I was able to kite the larger mobs or bosses that we went against. Speaking of PvP, this is what I was most looking forward to and what likely is going to be my main focus and the deciding factor for my build when New World fully releases. To me, PvP felt really good, and I liked how the abilities all have a decent cooldown or their mana base, so it's not like you're able to spam abilities to get kills. It's going to require some skill, knowledge of the mechanics, and likely good coordination with your squatter team. Now the PvP seemed to be scaled fairly heavily, which really only gives higher levels the advantage of having those additional abilities or having those abilities leveled up significantly, which is going to allow their builds to be more honed in around their gear and their weapons. For completing PvP quests, early on it was pretty wild, just because starting off in the territories that are in the middle or bottom part of the map, they're highly populated with the majority of the player base. So as the beta went on, people began to disperse across the map, and you really saw a more reasonable amount of conflict. But there really wasn't any time where I was able to get one-on-one fights with enemy faction members. It was mainly coordinated squad fights. Now there is an option to duel without consequences, but I really hope there is some kind of arena feature where you can do solo, duo, trio type PvP. Now when you die, your armor wears down a bit, which will lead to it needing to be repaired, and you either spawn at your camp if you laid it down or back at the nearest settlement, but you're not losing gear or any items when you die. But listen, I was slaying folks out there no matter what level they were, and I just cannot wait to get into some more action once the game fully releases. Now the funnest part about PvP, or at least the best instance, was war over the territories. I mean, War was pretty next level. Now, as I mentioned, I'm not a huge MMO guy. The only game I've played similar or that I can compare it to is old school RuneScape. So this 50v50 war was really wild to me. So I participated in 2 with our faction, one where we attacked and one where we defended. And we actually went and won both of those. I wasn't a huge contributor or a huge factor in either of those wins, but I was just happy to be there. By completing PvP faction quests in another faction's territory or even holding control of their fort, you begin to put that territory in conflict, which allows you to call a war on them if you're the governor of the company that has a territory. So some war gameplay is going to be shown now, but basically there are 3 flags. The attackers need to stand on a flag for a period of time, gaining control of that flag, similar to like domination in Call of Duty. And after capturing all 3 flags, you then begin sieging the fort by destroying the doors and taking the flag or point inside. So throughout the war, you are going to get points by doing damage and getting kills, and that's going to allow you to purchase consumables, ammunition, traps, and other siege equipment like cannons or turrets, which is going to help you in your efforts of winning the war. Now, I know this game was a beta, it's not the full product, but we have to talk about some of the cons or negatives that I had. First off, in the early game, you're going to do a lot of running back and forth. Now, I know this complaint was spammed in the global chat, on Reddit, Twitter, it's kind of a meme now, but I'm talking about being on your Forrest Gump shit. This was complained about heavily, and I know that people are suggesting mounts being added in the game. I don't think there's really been an affirmative on whether mounts will be added, but early on, just all this running is going to suck. But as you progress and you gain material called Azoth, which I've mentioned throughout, you're going to be able to fast travel to the different settlements that you've traveled to across the map, which kind of becomes a game changer. For me, the town board tasks and even the faction quests are highly repetitive, and there isn't much variation at the moment. I do hope this changes, especially for the people that have reached, level 40 and higher in the beta, who are going to have to start fresh and grind all of those tasks again. The servers were down quite a bit throughout the beta period, which they were making, fixes and patches, it seemed like almost daily. But with Amazon being a $1 trillion company, and server issues on release are going to be expected, but in my opinion, it just shouldn't happen. But we know how it is, folks. I think the PvE mobs, at least early on, are very easy. I just hope that the endgame content or even higher leveling content for PvE presents some greater variation in how they attack and fight you, just to keep it challenging. But the biggest issue is that the servers need to have some method of faction balancing. In our server, I know my faction was the minority for the majority of the initial, few days of the game. Yet in the end, we ended up winning both the wars that I was in and holding our territory and taking another one. And I think we were a lot more coordinated in that war. But for the majority of the game, it was just a struggle since we were really outmanned. And I think that was probably the same for Covenant on a lot of servers. If you're in Covenant and that was the same for you, let me know down in the comments. But if they can have some sort of notice or method to even out the population of factions, that's going to make a lot more of an enjoyable experience for everyone involved. To wrap things up, if you can't tell by now, New World has completely won me over. I don't play MMOs, as I've said, and you can tell by my channel, but I had a hell of a time with this beta. I honestly really enjoyed the crafting and just gathering of resources just as much as I enjoyed traveling around the map and completing the various PvE and PvP content. Now, New World has such a great community feel in-game, in my opinion, and I think having proximity chat is a huge contributor to that, where you're really able to, coordinate and communicate with people around you and really meet some interesting characters. But with the various text channels in-game, it's so easy to chat, ask questions, figure out stuff, or find people for grouping. The grind overall to me was fun. I didn't go crazy. I was just shy of reaching level 30 in the beta, mainly because I wanted to pace myself and save a lot of the grind for the full release. But when day one, when this drops, I'm going to hit the ground running with a company, putting in the work to begin taking control over the territories. And if you can't tell, I highly recommend this game. If you aren't big into MMOs, I think the potential is immense with this one. And if the devs can stay on top of this and continue to support it with future content, I really do think the sky's the limit. There's a good chance this channel may take a real New World focus. I don't know if I'm gonna have to start dropping 2 videos a week, just so I can stay on top of, New World content as well as montages and other videos. We'll see. It's still early days and I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I hope you enjoyed this guide, this overview, and me just kind of sharing my thoughts. As always, if you enjoyed, please drop your boy a like and subscribe if you haven't to support the channel. I appreciate you all, and until next Tuesday, I'm out.